Welcome back. Well, if Malcolm Turnbull wins the next election, we'll be going to the polls pretty quickly again to vote on gay marriage or marriage equality. It's a policy Malcolm Turnbull inherited from Tony Abbott, in fact, so much so that he's made it pretty clear in all of his public interviews that it's not something he advocated for or supported, but that now he will go through with the policy. The public vote is estimated to cost $160 million. In a time of fiscal restraint, that's a significant sum of money. The arguments for and against marriage equality are passionate on both sides of the debate, but some are warning the plebiscite will be ugly. Others, including Labor, that it's not worth the money, given that it's not binding. Given it's Valentine's Day, I've got to say it's a coincidence we're having this debate on Valentine's Day, but we'll go with it. My guests tonight are Lyle Shelton from the Australian Christian Lobby and also Jason Tuazon-McCheyne, who is running for a Senate spot with the newly formed Australian Equality Party, which is very much focused on gay marriage and these issues. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks very much.
Lyle, I want to start with you. Are you demanding funding from the government for a no case?
Well, the government's still working through the process of the plebiscite, but I would expect that equal funding would be provided to both sides as there is in any other normal referendum, or in this case a plebiscite.
My understanding though is that they haven't decided yet. You put the case to them?
We've had some initial discussions. The government has reached out to us and some other groups that are in this space, and obviously we'd like to see equal funding to both sides. I think it's got to be a fair debate, and I think more importantly, people from our side of the debate have got to feel free that they can speak without being labelled as haters or homophobes or bigots, and that's been really tough in this whole thing, and none of us want to see that sort of ugliness in the debate. We want to be respectful to the other side, but we want to be able to be free to speak about why we think marriage should be retained between a man and a woman. Jason,
you're against a plebiscite. Why?
One, it's $160 million that's wasted in this time of fiscal responsibility, and secondly, we're against the idea that our parliament can't actually just change the law with a vote. It took 10 minutes 11, 12 years ago for them to change the law in the first place, and it could take a short session to do it again, save money, and then save what is going to be months of harassment for gay, lesbian, transgender and intersex people.
I want to just get you on that, because Lyle says that he has freedom of speech. He should have freedom of speech to make the opposite argument. Doesn't he have the right to make the opposite case?
Look, yes, absolutely. Freedom of speech is very important, but I'm against public funding. I think it should be like Ireland, where they had no public funding.
On either side of the debate.
TV ads, equally no funding, and we should be able to make our cases. And I do extend to you this warm welcome of, I'd be prepared to work with you to make sure that we don't harm the children in particular of lesbian, gay, parented families, because our children, I can just tell you a story about Sasha just the other day, came to her mum when she found out that they weren't able to be married, and said to her, why do people not like us? And she's 9. This sort of thing is going to happen, and you know, you had the noose photograph that was on social media the other week. It's outrageous to have that sort of conversation.
Absolutely.
No one wants to see any harm come to children at all, least of all children who are being raised by same-sex parents.
But do you concede that there would be some harm? I mean, if there's a big, strong campaign saying your family is wrong, that would have an impact on the children.
Your family is wrong. No one's saying that same-sex couples can't be good parents. Of course they can. Our concern is that every child should have every possibility of being raised by their mother and father. Every child has a mother and father somewhere. And if we change the definition of marriage in law, some children will be required to miss out on their mother and father. And I think that's a threshold.
Let me just put this to you though, Lyle. At the moment, gay and lesbian people are having children without marriage. So how is it going to have any impact at all on that, given they're doing it anyway?
Yes, and just because it's happening at the moment, I'm not sure that that's right, and I'm not sure that we've had a proper community debate about it, because it requires assisted reproductive technology. It requires.
How could you stop it?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to realise is that those advocating for a change in the definition of marriage are also calling for the lifting of Australia's prohibition on commercial surrogacy. Now, commercial surrogacy is inherently...
I'll give you a run around.
It's in the Human Rights Commissioner's report at the end of last year. Now, you can't have marriage equality for two men unless they are able to acquire babies, to get babies through this sort of technology, they need donor wombs, donor eggs, and similarly sperm donation. And there's problems with anonymous donor gametes and children being severed from their biological ties.
Jason, you're a gay dad. What's your response to that criticism that you know that it's taking away?
Adrian and I have been together, and I'm celebrating Valentine's Day with you tonight instead of him. We have a son.
We would like to make it interesting here at Sky.
We have a son who's turning 10 next week using compensated surrogacy. I agree that we need to have regulation for creating our families. We need to have compensated surrogacy available in Australia. It needs to be done legally and ethically correctly with psychological support, and like it's done in California and Canada, for example. That would actually make it easier for the thousands of children that are currently raised by two fathers through a compensated surrogacy arrangement. And not only that, there's lots of legal uncertainty around our families, but we want to go back to the fact that marriage equality is separate to raising children. As you said, Patricia, we have had our kids already, and we're going to continue to have our children. The problem is my son, my beautiful son, and I know you've got your children, he does not have the same legal standings and protections that you're...
But how does he not, though? Because same-sex couples, because of the labour reforms, do have the same rights.
Under the Constitution, and it wasn't actually put there for this intent, but it means that children born to a surrogate and, in any surrogate arrangement, the surrogate and their partner, with or without any biological connection, are the legal parents under Australian law. Not good enough. It needs to change. The other thing that I just want to say is that when you make these comments about somehow that my family is a second-class citizen...
Oh, I've never said
No, but you are. No, but you're saying there's something...
Well, that's how you read it, but Lyle says that that's not his intention. So
I'm just saying that...
How do we manage that? Interestingly, so we might have, let me tell you this, because I have pretty good sources in the government, we might have a plebiscite in October. That early. That's on the cards now, or at least early next year.
If on the time of the election, of course.
Of course. It could be within 3 months of the election if the Turnbull government is re-elected. How are you going to conduct this debate in a way where you do have your free speech, but people like Jason don't feel like their children are being dragged through the mud?
I'm not aware of anyone from our side who've dragged anyone's children through the mud. We're simply saying that if we're going to change the definition of marriage in law, that affects the definition of parenting. Under the UN, marriage is a compound right to found and form a family. Jason's already said that he thinks surrogacy is needed. I'm with the global feminist movement that wants a ban on all forms of surrogacy. I think it's inherently exploitive of women.
I accept that you don't support surrogacy, but it is a separate issue. I know you mentioned
it's not actually, Patricia, because...
Well, it is if we're to vote on marriage equality in an election. But we're not voting on surrogacy.
No, but there are consequences that flow, and this will be the next thing that's pushed, and we have...
Actually, good consequences that flow.
I can just finish...
One at a time.
We've got the Human Rights Commissioner saying that we need commercial surrogacy in Australia. In his report, Resilient Individuals, he's highlighted that this is a problem. So you can't have marriage equality unless there is access to the ability to produce children in ways that are ethically dubious. And I think that's what we've got to focus on. There are consequences to this change which aren't being discussed at the moment.
I want to go back to marriage.
There needs to be equality for children in this, Patricia. They don't get a say as to whether they miss out on their mother or their father.
Okay, I need to say something there, Patricia.
Yeah.
There's no stolen generation, which is something you've said in the past, and that's really distasteful towards Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders to start with. These children, born to same-sex parented families, would not exist if the same-sex parented families didn't go through extensive process and planning to bring them into the world. So they're not being denied anything. They're actually being given 2, maybe 3, sometimes 4 parents because they've been brought into this world because they've been planned for, loved and made happen. So there's no missing parents in that.
I'm the host here. I'm taking back control because I want to go back to marriage equality and the plebiscite we're going to have. I know that you'll be raising these issues in a campaign, but let's get back to the substantive issue, which is this issue of marriage equality, gay marriage. Given this is now on the agenda and you're saying you do want public funding, you don't, how do you think this is going to fall?
Yeah, well, I hadn't heard that Jason was of that view. I don't really mind so long as it's equal for both sides.
Of course.
So, I guess that's the thing. But the key thing for us is freedom of speech. Now, we've got a situation where the leader of the Australian marriage equality movement, Rodney Croome, is trying to has encouraged people to take the Archbishop of Hobart, Archbishop Julian Porteous, and the entire Catholic Bishops' Conference to the Human Rights Commission simply because they distributed a booklet, a beautiful little booklet that wasn't disrespectful to anyone anyone, just explaining what millions of Australians believe about marriage.
Would you accept not having any advertising during the campaign?
Well, I think
if it was
we've
equal,
got to have free speech, and state-based anti-discrimination laws are a problem. There's a low threshold. If someone feels offended, they can take someone along to some government commissioner, and that's a real break and a chilling effect on free speech, which needs to be addressed if this plebiscite is going to be fair.
I'm going to put a question to you, Jason, and then one to you, which are kind of related. Jason, given you believe in this issue very strongly, why not have a plebiscite and give everybody a vote? You know, democracy on steroids.
My life is not for a popular vote.
But we have popular votes all the time on social
But we didn't have a
on
popular
issues.
vote. Why don't we have a popular vote on euthanasia? No.
Do you support a public vote on euthanasia?
It may well come to that one day. I mean, this has had 17 attempts in the federal parliament the last 10 years.
So this is an issue now.
A lot of parliamentary time. The parliament has been unable to resolve it. I think it's fair, after all this relentless use of parliamentary time, to now give it to the people to have a say. And because the consequences are so profound for children, for freedom of speech, freedom of religion.
So, Jason, returning to the question I asked you, you don't support a broad democratic vote?
At the end of the day, people are actually dying. Young people are killing themselves who are gay and lesbians 6 to 7 times more likely than straight people. Every time your organisations like you speak, calls for mental health hotlines and LGBT hotlines go.
So given we now do have a plebiscite on the cards, but we are having one.
That's a terrible emotional blackmail. I mean, we try to be really, really respectful, and no one, you know, I've asked some of the people who tweet this sort of stuff on Twitter, please give examples of where I've been hateful or vile. There are none, and we are very respectful in this, and we have to be free. Both sides have to be free to put their case, and if this is the case, then we might as well pack up and go home, and I don't think that's fair.
I want to put this to you, Lyle. Given gay marriage equality has been successful in so many countries around the world.
17 out of 170 something.
Well, including Ireland.
Yes, they had and I went to Ireland before Christmas and spoke to...
Do you really think you can stop it here? That was the other part of my question.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, Patricia. Yeah, I do, because, and the reason is I've spoken to some of the leaders of the people who ran our campaigns in other countries, and in all of those places, there were tricks and things that went on in Ireland. 30% of the advertising material was ripped down. The police refused to do anything. The two gay guys, Paddy and Keith, who were on our side, they're gay, but they support the rights of kids to a mum and a dad. They said it was a reign of terror in Ireland. In France, they had surrogacy tied up with it. When 1 million people marched in the streets, the government pulled the surrogacy out and voted on gay marriage at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we want to have a fair and open, transparent debate.
Jason, are you committed to having a fair and open? Because you've warned about these consequences. Should the government, for instance, provide extra counselling services during a referendum? Would that appease?
The plebiscite, they're going to have to do that if we have one. If Labor win, there won't be a plebiscite, which is one of the options out there. If Liberal win, they're going to do that. I want to ask you, Lyle, how does, on this Valentine's Day, my marriage and my relationship with Adrian of 18 years affect your marriage?
Well, if the definition of marriage is changed, it's no longer assumed that millions of people like myself who are married, it's assumed that I'm married to a woman. So that affects me straight away. I have to, well, people no longer assume that I'm married to a woman. I have to explain myself. Now, I think the important thing is that...
So you're worried about people assuming you're gay if the law changes?
Well, they may or may not, but suddenly the terms of my marriage have changed, and that of every other marriage in Australia. The government doesn't care.
Over time, divorce used to be up until the 18th century because the king of the day wanted to change the law, so the Catholic Church split. Marriage is evolving. You no longer are you owning women. You talk about it being it's a changing of the social agenda, it's a radical change. Well, it is, just like suffragettes were, just like the civil rights movement was. So you can now vote, Patricia. You can marry someone who's not white nowadays. And as it's done in New Zealand, and New Zealand actually they've got some studies, already their mental health of a whole stack of people in that country have improved because of marriage equality 2 years ago.
Lyle, given the public polling, which shows really significant public support, and I've got to say, given that, you think you're going to romp it in, aren't you, your side?
I think a fear campaign is very, very easy to sway people's minds, and I think people are afraid because they don't understand necessarily, but I do think that the changes...
People aren't stupid, they can make an assessment.
We're not interested in a fear campaign. We just believe if Australians get to hear the other side of the story and realise this is more than just about love and equality. I mean, in the US...
But do you concede it is about love and equality for some people?
Well, yes, but it's also about equality for children, and I think that...
Okay, let me put this to you then. I've got a good one for you.
Can I just say, Patricia...
How about the gay couples who don't have children? They just want to be married.
Well, unless someone's going to, create a marriage law that then disbars that, and I don't think that's the case. We've had the calls for commercial surrogacy. That's ethically problematic. In the US, 30 states had referendum, and they all voted for marriage to be retained between a man and a woman. In New Zealand, the polls actually went in favour of marriage between a man and a woman just before the week before.
We're running out of time. I'll give you the final word, Jason, just on this issue. We've got a Prime Minister that is in favour of gay marriage. We've got the opposition leader that's in favour of gay marriage. We've got the Greens leader in favour of gay marriage. You say you're afraid of a fear campaign. If all of those leaders are in favour of it, how can you possibly lose?
Hopefully we don't, but hopefully we can just have a parliamentary vote and bring equality to the 500,000 to 1 million people in this country who deserve to be treated as first-class citizens. It's as simple as that.
I want to thank you both, Lyle. Thank you for coming in, and Jason too. I think we've just given people a bit of a taste of what this campaign, which I reckon might even be at the end of the year, will look like. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thanks for Jason. All right.
Now, I'll be back in a moment with Zeitgeist, which is our segment when we